Say yes.
Hey everyone, good morning. It is Melissa P. Dunn. Welcome to another live episode of the Dunn Wisdom Show. I have been inspired to go back to the original rhythm of this show when we started in 2019. When we started in 2000 at the pandemic, we would go live every single day. And so, with life and time, the timing and the rhythm and the pace of the show shifted to make room for me once I became a commissioner and started to grow the business. And now that we're stepping into a new season, a reconstructed season, a season of overflow and harvest, Holy Spirit is challenging me to find a new rhythm. And so I am committing to coming live every single day for the next 21 days as I do my 21 day of prayer and fast, which is my way of consecrating myself so that I can be prepared to lead and to serve the way that God's calling me to lead and serve. And so yesterday I went live at 7 p.m. and that just didn't really feel right. So in my quiet time this morning, the inspiration came to come live at 9:30ish. And so here I am. And if you are watching this, I invite you to, when you're watching this, I invite you to grab a beverage, grab a cup of coffee, grab a healthy meal, and join me in this conversation. So my name is Melissa P. Dunn. I am the CEO of MD Marketing and Consulting. I am also a commissioner in the city of Lauderdale, Florida, which is a city neighboring Fort Lauderdale with about 75,000 people. I am also the founder of this Dunn Wisdom movement, founder of the Freedom90 method, and I am founder of the Uriel Wisdom Foundation. So I'm excited to share with you my journey. I'm excited to share with you some of the lessons that I have learned along the way in life and leadership and also in business. I started MD Marketing in 2014. So that's over 10 years ago. And I have, seen this company transition from a traditional ad agency focusing on working with nonprofits to a agency that really leaned into the government contracting space, an agency that really leaned into working with socially responsible corporations who want to do good and make money, right? And so before the pandemic, my way of leading was completely different than my way of leading now. Before the pandemic, yes, I was faith driven. Yes, I believed very much in God, but I was the CEO of my company, me. Before the pandemic, I, led with hustle and grind. I operated with hustle and grind. I really focused more on my strength and my will and my everything along with the team in order for us to grow this business. And guess what? We did. We did grow the business pre-pandemic. At the time of the pandemic, I believe we had already passed the six-figure mark. But it was with, a lot of contractors. It was with a lot of effort, right? And then the pandemic happened. The pandemic happened, and like with a lot of us around the world, things stopped. Business shifted. I went from having a lot of government contracts, a lot of nonprofit contracts, to basically zero, right? And at the time, I was running for office. So can you imagine now being in public, running for office and struggling to figure out how the heck am I going to pay my rent? Struggling to figure out how the heck am I going to eat? That's what happened to me during the pandemic. And that's what happened to a lot of us, right? So I started to do the Dunn Wisdom show. Back then we called it the Dunn Wisdom Morning Show. I started to come live every morning at 9 a.m. just to create a sense of connection, just to make sure that I'm using my skills and my gifts in a way that was lifting up other people and really and truly lifting up myself, right? And so that was my heart posture. That was my intention. And one of my clients saw it and was like, you know what, would you mind creating a Facebook Live episode for me? And so that's kind of what sustained me a little bit, along with, a lot of, emergency loans and all the other stuff. And so fast forward 2020, I win my election. Now I'm in office. And as I'm in office, I'm starting to build up my company again, right? Halfway through, maybe after I've been in office for about 2 years, God asked me to shift. Well, actually my heart posture shift, because at that point I started to really uncover what I'm going to teach you today. I started to really uncover that as a CEO of a business, that you really can operate the business one way or the other. It could either be where you operate the business where you're the head, you're the person in charge, right? Where you're grinding, you're really relying on yourself, or you can really invite God to be CEO of your business. So I decided maybe about a year or so after I got into office that I was going to shift my life, deepen my relationship with God, be very much more intentional about inviting him into not just my heart, but invite him into my business, invite him into my leadership, so that he, in essence, became CEO of my business. He, in essence, became CEO of my life, right? And the way that I led shifted, the way that I showed up in rooms shifted, the way that I responded and served shifted. And because I started to shift, I started to change, my life started to transform from the inside out in a deeper, more sustainable way. And so, over the last, I would say 3 years, he has brought me through a process that I now call the Freedom90 method, which is a process that I am currently teaching. And so today in this live conversation, I want to offer you a few keys to freedom in 2026. And over the next 7 days, I'm going to share with you those keys. And so this is the first part of a 7-part series in my 21-day social media live commitment. All right. So the first key here, and by the way, please feel free to join the conversation, right? I would love it if you have a question or a comment for you to type it in. Let me know where you're viewing from so that we can have a conversation. If you have questions, let me know. I'm an open book. I'm happy to answer any questions. All right. So the first key to true freedom is obedience. And this one is hard sometimes, right? Because we sometimes want to do what we want to do. Obedience is the first key to, I just realized that I did not select, give me 1 second, guys. I just realized in my eagerness to go live, I did not select, I don't know what I didn't do, but I didn't select the brand. All right, whatever. Okay, obedience. That's the first key. That's the important key. And so obedience in life, obedience in business, obedience in leadership, really, really, really important. I found that once I made that commitment to, do what God says, that I really needed to learn for myself exactly what he says, not just what I learned in church, or not just what I remember from my parents, but learned for myself what he says about leadership. Learn for myself what the principles are around business, what the principles are about life, right? And once I understood those principles, then it is my job to live in responsive obedience to those principles. And as a result, then I would see a shift in my life. I would see a shift from the inside out in my business and in my leadership. And so I have learned that this is a key success factor for freeing me from worry, which is something that is a habit that I developed as a child, right? Being worried about what's next, being worried about who is going to do what, when. And so once I made the commitment to invite God to be the CEO of my life, to be the CEO of my leadership, to be the CEO of my business, then it made it easier. So the first key, and when I say easier, I mean, I was able to release fear and worry and anxiety around, well, how am I going to make payroll today? Or, what should I put in this RFP? What should I put in this proposal? Because listen, I invited him. It's his business. It's not mine. So when you are the boss, then it's up to you to figure out how to go. So the leadership in action principle that I followed is to invite God to be the CEO and to go to him for the strategy. So I'm writing a proposal, right? And in the RFP, the agency that I'm submitting the bid for, they're really clear about what the scope of work is, right? They already say what it is that they want to promote, what the outcome they want to go. They give me the scope of work. But as a marketer, it is now my job to come back and say, well, here is a strategy on how we're going to accomplish that scope of work. Here's a timeline. Here's how we're going to go about doing it. And here's how much I'm going to charge, right? The agency is looking for me to provide that content in my RFP. So for me, before I write any RFP, we do the analysis, but then I always say, Holy Spirit, what's the strategy? How can we serve this client? How can we make sure that whatever it is that we do will get the results that the client needs, right? So I always go to him for strategy. I always go to him for pricing. And then after we craft the RFP, then I bring it back to him again. Right. And if we don't get the job, I don't feel any way about it, because guess what? It's not my company, it's his. It's not my strategy, it's his. Right. And if I don't get the job, that just means that this is not the right job for me. But what it also means is that I strengthen my faith. What it also means is that I strengthen my co-creation with my boss. What it also means is that I was obedient. What it also means is that I learned a different way and I got a chance to practice the RFP. And by the way, when I don't get an RFP, if it's a contract that we really want, I sometimes do a public records request and ask for feedback so that I can know what we did wrong and how we could perform better, so that the next RFP then becomes easier and becomes more impactful. I hope that makes sense, right? So the bottom line is obedience is critical. And invite the leadership in action principle here is invite God to be the CEO of your business and go to him for strategy. So key number 2 is trust. And trust is sometimes really, really challenging. For me, I am a thinker, right? I love to know the plan from A to Z. And sometimes, if I'm lucky, I will see a vision of the future. Like I'll understand the vision behind what God is creating, right? What he's trying to accomplish through me and in me. I'll see the vision. But along the way comes obstacles. Along the way, you'll encounter oppression. Along the way, you'll encounter opposition. And by the way, there's a clear distinction between the three. A distinction that I'm going to be teaching at the Freedom 90 Experience on January 17th, right? So all of these things show up along the way, and oftentimes that's when we want to quit. That's when we want to stop. But what happens for me is that instead of giving me steps 1 to A to Z, he sometimes just gives me steps A, B, and C. And then he gives me the vision, right? And so part of the role of an obedient daughter, part of the role of a loyal employee is for me to then, when he gives me the strategy and I'm clear about my role in executing the strategy, then I get to trust his timing. I get to trust the results to him, right? Because it's his business, it's not mine. And so as a CEO, as a second in command in my business, then my leadership in action is once God gives me the strategy as my boss, I then get to trust him with the business, right? So I get to trust the business to him. I get to trust the contract to him. I get to trust payroll to him because it's his business. It's not mine, if that makes sense, right? So once he gives you the strategy, trust him with your business because it's his, it's not yours. That's the second leadership in action when it comes to activating trust. And, this sometimes can be challenging, but the key to really activating your faith is to surrender. That's what really gives root to trust and to faith. And so surrender for me looks like back to the whole RFP example, right? After the opportunity comes to me, I do the part that I can do on my own, which is to do the analysis, do the research. And I, go to him for strategy, for pricing, and I submit the RFP. I surrender all of it to him. Then I'm not going to be like obsessing about, am I going to get the contract or not? No, that just creates worry, and fear creates unnecessary suffering. It creates self-imposed suffering. I'm going to say that again. Worry and fear creates unnecessary self-imposed suffering that stifles your progress as an entrepreneur, that limits the growth of your business, that limits your growth as a founder and CEO of your business, right? I'm going to call you the founder. But really and truly, the method, the spirit-led approach that I'm taking to entrepreneurship and leadership, it's not my business, it's his, right? So I'm learning to surrender the results. I'm learning to surrender the timing to him. And part of what I'm leaning into on my journey as a spirit-led entrepreneur and leader is for me to take all of my concerns, all of my worries, take all of the entire process, submit it, and get guidance, get reassurance. So those are really the tools that I use in my leadership in order for me to show up as a free, spirit-led leader in this day. And so I can tell you that since I have approached this, since I have taken this approach in leadership and entrepreneurship, I have grown my business under the leadership of my CEO. I have grown my business. We have grown the business together to multiple six figures. And we are now on our way to co-creating our first seven-figure year. All right. And so this approach works for me. It doesn't eliminate stress, because stress is stress, right? But it puts puts stress in perspective. It puts the challenges that come with entrepreneurship in perspective. They don't feel so heavy. This approach to entrepreneurship and leadership means that I am not carrying the weight and the burden of growing this business by myself. I'm not carrying the weight and the burden of leading a community of 75,000 people by myself. I am not carrying the burden of, being my best self by myself. And so this approach to freedom is really the foundation on which I have co-created a successful multiple six-figure agency. I almost said multiple seven-figure agency. It's coming. We're not there yet, but I'm claiming it. All right. I am claiming it. And so this approach to leadership and entrepreneurship, I believe, is the key to growing and scaling your business with ease and grace rather than with hustle and grind. And I ain't got no time for hustle and grind. Trust and believe. None. Hey, Terrence. Thank you so much for watching. I'm so grateful. So my question to you is, how do you want to, what are you calling in 2026? How do you want, what kind of impact do you want to have? What kind of growth are you looking for in your life? What kind of growth, and I'm curious, Terrence, what kind of growth are you looking for in your life? What kind of growth are you looking for in your business? And how can you apply these principles that I have taught in today's lesson to help you as you begin to come up with your growth strategy for 2026. So that's my intention, guys, behind these lessons that I'm going to be teaching over the next remaining 20 days. I want you to go back. I want you to watch them. I want you to note the leadership and actions that I suggest, and for you to then apply it, right? Because knowledge gained and unapplied is useless. So I want you to watch the video and take the action. Watch the video and take the action. This is the key to you having a 2026 that far outshines 2025. And I really pray for you that your business expands. I really pray for you that you find more peace, that you find more happiness, that God's will is done in your life and in your business. And I want to, if you are a woman in leadership and you are in South Florida, I want to invite you to join me on the 17th. And you know what? Even if you are not a woman in leadership in South Florida and you're interested in learning more, send a woman on your team. But the 17th of January, we're going to be hosting our very first in-person event called the Freedom90 Experience, where I'm going to be teaching some of these principles. And I'm going to be supporting women in identifying their calling, clarifying their vision, really leaning into who God is calling them to be in life, in leadership, and in business. So you can go to the Freedom90 Experience.eventbrite.com to learn more. We have a little bit under 2 weeks, so there's still tickets available. Go to Freedom90.eventbrite.com to learn more. And I look forward to seeing you. But if not, please join me back here again tomorrow at between 9 and 9:30 for, let me commit. Join me back here tomorrow at 9 a.m. for another lesson in leadership. All right, y'all. That's it for me today. Be well. God bless you.